My friends, some of you might have to prepare for some
emotional damage.
I hate to break it to you like that. It's not you, it's me. Our beloved Ukrainska Armia, they're abandoning Bakhmut.
Hold on, I'm getting a bit emotional.
They're all pulling back from the furnace. It's all crumbling. There's no hope. It's over. The area you can see on screen is the last Ukrainian stronghold in the city. Fighting is now taking place in the south of Bakhmut, called the Sovkhoz district. And all along the Chayvskogo street, with the Ukrainian stronghold of the stronghold of the stronghold, so the super stronghold, around what the Russians call the Tetris district, from my understanding around the industrial college. But the Russians are attacking from every side now. Wagnerian forces are thrusting deep in any opening they find. And the drama continues as the Russians are now firing a wild barrage of incendiary ammunition on the poor Ukrainian troops that dug in that last stretch of the city. In the end, it's just a matter of time before this position collapses as well. Check out what this Ukrainian soldier that just got out from Bakhmut had to say.
Что я хочу сказать? Бахмут пал. Если что, напоминайте вам.
This is Bakhmut as of now. So much for a strategically unimportant small regional city. And here's a picture of the mayor of Kyiv showing how much territory the Ukrainian military still holds in Bakhmut. Jokes aside, let me whip out my massive map. Behind me was the situation on the Bakhmut front on May 14th in my last video. And this is now. The Russians have fully captured the citadel. To fully understand what happened, we have to go back to May 14th. At this point, the Russian army was facing what we all call, thanks to Defense Politics Asia, the citadel. The citadel is a massive complex of high-rise commie blocks. And Wagnerians stood right here at the edge. The Ukraine command separated the Bakhmut defenses in 3 positions. This residential sector here made up the left flank. To avoid being entirely cut off, the Ukrainians also heavily reinforced the right flank near the MiG-17 monument, near the Tetris district. Most troops were positioned on the flanks, while in the center, the citadel had less troops, since it benefited from the defensive advantage of the commie blocks. Initially, the Russian plan was to bypass the stronghold and flank it through the residential sector that was made up of many small houses. From a tactical perspective, large Ukrainian forces cannot hide in these destroyed buildings, so Ukrainian infantry had to spread out in small groupings of 3 to 5 soldiers. Due to the vital importance of this area, since it secured both the supply lines going through Hromove and Ivanivske, the Ukrainian army kept sending reinforcements to this area. Prigozhin spoke of 500 Ukrainian replacements sent to Bakhmut every single day, and they all came through this sector. For sure, the Russians harassed these columns as much as they could. Here you can see an example of that. On the right you can see a BMP that disembarks 10 Ukrainian soldiers, which move towards this house, which is then targeted by Russian artillery. But the Russians kept pushing. And the main problem of the Ukrainian infantry was the suppressive fire of Russian tanks. Essentially, Russian tanks approach really close to Ukrainian positions and boom, direct fire right towards them. This article from the New York Times also talks about this. One Ukrainian soldier that was rotated out from Bakhmut said, "Russian tanks are giving us nightmares." It was difficult, but eventually the musicians pushed through the residential sector. And the main bone of the Ukrainian defense was the citadel. The Wagnerian HQ separated it into 4 districts: Horse, Nest, Constructor, and Domino. Who knows, maybe Domino's Pizza is the sponsor of this offensive. For legal purposes, this is a joke. The problem for the Russians is that each one of these blocks can house at least 100 troops easily. The problem for the Ukrainians is that they're stuck in these buildings. Here you can see a squad of around 10 Ukrainian soldiers at the entrance of one of the commie blocks. They're probably waiting to get picked up when a Russian artillery shell falls right in front of the opening, which causes disarray and forces them to quickly change positions. Meanwhile, every building was systematically destroyed by Russian howitzers, mortars, and SPG-9 recoilless guns. We can really witness Wagner's lack of ammunition. I didn't know that rocket-propelled shovels could do that much damage. Oh yeah, the aviation also jumped into the gangbang as well. Here you can see the impact of an FAB-500 bomb. Russian infantrymen are also sniping enemy strongholds using Kornet anti-tank missiles. In my last video I said that at a rate of 2-3 buildings a day, I expected the Russians to capture the citadel within 7 to 10 days, so around May 30th. But then the assault units of the orchestra went for their street performance and stormed the citadel head on. They literally attacked right in the middle, using Soviet deep battle doctrine that I already talked about in this video right here. The battle was fierce. As you can see here, an abandoned British-made FV-103 Spartan tracked armored vehicle. On May 16th, the musicians started the assault. Ukraine positions were falling one after the other, like dominoes. Coincidence? And by May 18th, the citadel was almost entirely into Russian hands. Almost! Here's what some Wagnerians said after capturing District Nest of the citadel.
Данный район полностью под нашим контролем. Вчера произвели штурм, зачистку. Ребята быстро отработали. Враг убегал, но не весь успел убежать. Отступление начал позавчера. Покидал свои последние позиции, прикрываясь гражданскими.
You heard him say it. The Russians actually attacked while the Ukrainians were already withdrawing from the citadel. And at this point, only Domino sector remained. Here's the fortified area Domino from the first-person shooter Call of Bakhmut, followed by Russian not-so-surgical strikes on the buildings in the Domino sector, with shells falling at 8 AM, then 3 PM, and then at 7 PM. And notice that after these buildings, there's nothing. The Ukrainian defenders there were looking straight into the abyss. Since diversity is our strength, units of 7 different formations were defending Domino, the 127th, the 229th, the 241st Territorial Defense, the 93rd Mechanized, all sent to Bakhmut as reinforcements, as well as the 49th Separate Rifle Battalion Carpathian Sich, and the remnants of the 60th Brigades, on top of some spec-up units, roughly 1,000 troops. Here you can see Yevgeny Prigozhin in the war room discussing the situation, and they made a color-coded picture of the district. It's like when you're taking notes in school, the moment you start coloring stuff, you know it's serious. But obviously being so close to the front also presents some sort of danger.
Да.
Отлично. А то, блин, кино некуда снимать будет.
On the 18th of May at 9:17 p.m., Wagnerians took control of the Domino fortified area. Welcome to History Legends, and here are the latest news of the Russo-Ukrainian War. Remember that if you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. As you know, just like with many other commentators, some of my Ukraine videos have been targeted with limited or no ads. So make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal to keep the show running. Thank you to everyone that has already helped, and welcome to the headquarters. Now let's talk about the Ukrainian perspective. Contrary to what was done in Mariupol, where they sacrificed a lot of elite units, the objective in Bakhmut was to pull out all the troops in an organized retreat. And do you remember what I said last time? Now the big question is whether Ukraine will pull off a US cavalry saves the day, an Alamo, or a Dunkirk. That means Ukraine has chosen Dunkirk. I told you many times a retreat is one of the hardest maneuvers to pull off. At any moment, it can turn into a rout. Yet, the Ukrainian general staff did something quite ingenious. They attacked on both the northern and southern flanks to secure multiple roads of retreat for the Bakhmut garrison. However, at this moment, it seems that the main axis of retreat would be from the south, while the northern one would only be secondary. And check out this video, one of Wagner's commanders said it himself.
Да. И кусочек вот здесь вот, да? Там, где они сейчас оттягиваются, эвакуируют раненых.
Эвакуация вот здесь в ангарах у них происходит. И вот здесь вот это все.
Да.
The area they're pointing at is the Sovkhoz district that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. and that's why the elite 3rd Assault Brigade Azov was sent on the southern flanks in order to fully secure this line of retreat. In my previous video, I asked myself the following. Now, according to the deployment maps, all the Russian paratrooper regiments are gone. Actually, most of them are deployed roughly 10 kilometers behind the front. So we can brainstorm and think of what happened. According to underground reports, turns out that some VDV units were withdrawn from the flanks in order to support Wagnerian assault squads in the urban area. And that could explain why they pushed with enough strength to allow a breakthrough. In the end, it's a huge gamble. Can the motorized infantry on the flanks hold long enough for the Wagnerians to take Bakhmut featuring the VDV? There's a high degree of complexity in such military operations. While the Ukrainians are attacking on the flanks, the Ukrainian garrison in Bakhmut is carrying its fighting retreat, and everything has to be perfectly coordinated. Every move has to be supported by Ukrainian mortars that would provide suppressive fire. The Ukrainians in the residential sector withdrew using the Hromove road in the north. The ones in the citadel were most likely separated in two groups. Elite guys and low tier. Group 1, the newbies, would go first through the Hromove road, and Group 2, the elite soldiers, tactically retrograded towards the right flank. And the way you have to see it, it's like if every position would fold one after another. And that explains why the positions in the citadel collapsed so fast. The Wagnerians said it themselves. The Ukrainians were already pulling back. Then the Ukraine garrison would hold in this sector, and like a chain reaction, everyone would tactically retrograde in the direction of this factory area, towards the MiG-17 monument, and lastly towards Ivanivske. Now looking at the recent gains of the Ukrainians on the flanks. In the north, the offensive came to a halt. The Russians established firing positions on high ground and the Ukrainians entered a bottleneck. However, in the south, the Russian front more or less collapsed. This was a situation before the offensive, and this is 1 week later. In a way, the Azov guys fought like devils day after day, almost sacrificing themselves to allow the men from Bakhmut to withdraw. However, they also have a personal vendetta because they lost the village of Klishivka and the surrounding heights to the Wagnerians in late January 2023. And to add one more layer of complexity, at the same time it seems that the Russians used combat security outpost doctrine. Ironically, it's the same type of fighting retreat the Ukrainians did in Bakhmut, but in open terrain. It's a defense in depth, where outposts would be positioned 2,000 meters in front of the main line of defense. These outposts would be manned by small groupings, by platoon or company-sized units. And this is more or less corroborated by the Ukrainians themselves. This Ukraine commander said that his troops had captured enemy strongpoints and had routed 2 Russian companies, aka the ones from the combat outposts. The goal of these outposts would be to simply slow down the enemy, a bit like javelin throwers against hoplites. That could also explain why we saw some Russian infantrymen just run away from the Ukrainian assault squads. Ground would be lost, but the objective is to inflict as many casualties as possible on the attacker, while the guys in the back prepare the defense. Like I said, this only works if 1. You slow down the attacker, and 2. You inflict significant casualties. Now take it with a handful of salt. But some reports claim that the armed forces of Ukraine lost more than 1,700 KIA or wounded from May 11th to the 14th in their Bakhmut counteroffensives. Maybe. At the same time, the 3rd Assault Brigade Azov keeps pushing more and more. And using this map, we can see that Ukrainians captured more or less 1.5 to 2.3 kilometers of terrain up until what seems to be the main Russian line of defense. All I can say is that the next days are going to be extremely interesting. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon and PayPal. The links are in the description below.